realized, or do they just build a chrysalis? Like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I imagine the first caterpillar who was like crawling around, and one of his buddies was like, guys, I'm gonna build like a crusty golden sleeping bag with her. Just curl up inside it, and just turn into a majestic winged beast. Listen, Kyle. Caterpillar. I don't know if that's gonna work out too well. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, he emerged like, it's working! I was walking past a store the other day that was going out of business, and had these 3 signs in the window that said, store closing, clearance, we lost our lease. That's too much information. It's real sad now. Like, I want to learn about you. Like, I want to see, like, store closing, clearance. I'm a failure. Like, store closing, clearance. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Oh, Richard. Like, store closing, clearance. My brother-in-law lent me $40,000 to open this business. How will I face him at Christmas? I was watching that show. Does anybody know the show House Hunters?
Yeah.
That's very cool. For those of you who don't know the show House Hunters, it's a TV show on HGTV, which is about couples on the brink of divorce trying to salvage their shit marriage by trying to make it. And basically, they'll show up to these towns, and they'll get a choice from 3 houses to live in, and they have to pick one, because that's what real estate is. What's very confusing to me about house hunters is I feel like all these couples are walking into these houses like they have no idea what renovation or contracting or cleaning is. Because they'll walk in and be like, no, not that wall. Like, okay, well, it's not like load bearing, you can take it down. Like, what? No, you cannot. It's like, these tiles are pretty dirty. It's like, well, let's bring a guy in, like, you can, like, sandblast them. We'll like, what? Yeah, so I imagine these couples are just moving town to town, just destroying house after house, just living in it until it crumbles to the ground, like some sort of Black Death that's looking for charter schools. And actually, my landlord's kind of similar to the people you see on House Hunters. Because I called him the other day. I was like, hey, Julio, it's James in 5F. You know, like the sink's leaking in the kitchen. If like you can send a couple guys over to check it out. And he acted like that was the end of the apartment building. Like, the sink's leaking, come check it out. He goes, what? The sink's doing what? Oh no. Tighten a couple bolts and it'll be fine. Not so initially came by. Okay, real quick, I'm gonna do an impression of. Do you guys know those like plastic tubes that have another plastic tube inside it and you turn it upside down and it makes like that weird noise?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Yeah. She's gonna like this one. If you don't know what those are, you will in a second. I'm graduating soon, so I have to start applying for jobs. And I think one job I might try to get is to be a hotcake salesman. Those are always selling fast. I might try to set up, get like a suit that's just way too big for me, and then get a job interview with Jenny Craig. Just walk in and be like, I know what I'm doing. We're done here. I actually had a job interview recently, and first off, like I had to go into the city. I put on my suit. I went to the city. First, when I was going into the city, I got lunch at Shake Shack at Grand Central, and I heard quite possibly the most New York sentence I've ever heard. I was just sitting there eating my sandwich, and I saw this old guy sitting there eating his. He was looking at the table, and then he stood up, and he just starts going, Marlena! 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 And the woman next to me just says, is that a crazy guy or like a flash mob? So I had my suit on and went all the way down to the east side for my job interview, and when I got there, I found out it was a phone interview. I just felt like an idiot, you know, like I was just in the middle of the East Village, and like, well, I'm very qualified when trucks go by. And that actually made me feel a little bit better when I thought about it, because whenever I would go into the city, I'd be on the subway and I would see like a businessman in a suit on his phone. He's so intimidating. Oh, that guy's like power. But now it's just a guy that got the day wrong. He's just like on the phone with whoever's trying to get a job from him. But actually, I'm lucky because I ended up getting that job, which is good. So this job, I'm going to be doing freelance cinematography work for an internet startup. It's all set for life. But for my first day of work, my boss came up to me and he said, just want to know if like paperwork you go like Jim or James. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Like I get to choose. That's so weird. That I get to choose what people call me at work. It's interesting that I get to do it because I've known people my whole life that don't get to do that. I knew a guy in high school named Haralambos Papadatos with an X that you can put anywhere. And he can't choose. He just has to be Haralambos. And he can't choose, but he kind of tried to because the first time I met Haralambos, I was like, hey, how's it going? I'm James, but if you want, you can call me Jim. And he said, okay, I'm Haralambos and you can call me Bobby. I don't think I can. I can maybe call you Harry. Even that seems like an insult to your parents. I'm worried about this new job though because the job I had before this is I worked at a gourmet cheese shop. That was my job before college. I worked there for a while. I was pretty good at it, but the one thing that I would never do is I would never answer the phone at work. Just regardless of what it was, I would not answer the phone. And there's no way to justify it, I just wouldn't answer it. And I would be working like 6-hour shifts, and someone would call, I wouldn't answer it. 20 minutes later, they'd call again, I wouldn't answer it. And like 3 hours later, they would call, and like, I'm not that busy, and they know I'm not that busy. And I would imagine that the third time they call, they're just driving by on their phone, like, just not answering. There's no way to justify it, but then I remembered, because I was telling someone about this recently, I remembered the reason that I don't answer the phone at work, and it's because the one time I answered the phone at work, I was there, it was just me and my boss. My boss was helping some people pick out their cheeses. So I answered the phone. And the phone we had at work was not very good. So the woman on the other end, I was like, hello, like, does Mr. Fine cheese? And she said, Marianne at the wine store, John at the art store, tell Kevin about John at the art store. I said, okay, got it, tell Kevin about John at the art store, no problem. She goes, did you hear me? I said John at the art store, so tell Kevin. I said, yeah, don't worry, I got it, I'll tell Kevin about John at the art store. She said, what's your name? I said, James. She said, I'm going to be talking to Kevin about you. And so I said, my boss was like, what was that? It was the woman at the art store. She said to tell you about John at the art store. I don't really know what's going on. Maybe just go down there and talk to her. So he went and he came back. I was like, so what happened? He said, I'm sorry. He said, like, John at the art store killed himself. And it's so sad, but all I could think of was that woman's perspective on the other end of the phone. Like, hello, it's Marianne at the art store. You have to tell Kevin that John at the art store killed himself this morning. I was like, yep, tell Kevin.